This podcast was recorded on May 7th, 2019. In this podcast, I talk with Tommy Ryan, the president of ThreeWill, about why we moved off of Slack and over to Office 365. This podcast will be great for you if you're in the initial stages of trying to figure out how and why you should move from Slack over to Office 365. Hi, and welcome to the Work Together Better podcast. This is your host, Danny Ryan. This is ThreeWill's official podcast about enterprise collaboration, how people, process, and technology combine to help organizations, departments, and teams work together better. Hello, and welcome to the Work Together Better podcast. This is your host, Danny Ryan. I'm here with the other host, Tommy Ryan. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm doing well, Danny. It's a great day. It's springtime.
It's beautiful outside.
Things are blooming. Yeah.
Yes, it's wonderful. It was a beautiful day today. I'm looking forward to get out later on as well. So today we wanted to get together. The last couple of weeks we've been getting together to talk about migrating off of different platforms and into Office 365. And today wanted to talk to you about Slack. And to get us started here, I know we had some experience where we're using Slack internally and migrating off ourselves. Maybe the best place for us to start here is just sort of talk about our own sort of personal experience, since that's probably a microcosm of what some of the larger companies run into. Tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, it's very similar to what you see out there with other social-based collaboration platforms. Very centered around the conversation and making that kind of a stream of activity that people can hop in and out of, which is a different metaphor than collaboration within, say, email, where it's kind of limited and you can't kind of hop in to the conversation and expand and contract the group very easily. Mm-hmm. So we found it, user interface was clean. You can get started quickly, and then you could extend with some of the connectors to do things. And so where we started is, I think, where a lot of organizations start is on the DevOps side of things, to have teams kind of work together and be able to share information as they're going in a virtual way. So really, we enjoyed it. But what was interesting is we saw Teams coming on board, and we got on the bandwagon with Teams since the release of it. And we kicked the tires in Teams for maybe a month at most. And we decided, no, this is good enough for us to move over and just sunset the Slack as a way to collaborate on projects.
Did we have to migrate any of the content over, or was it just just turn it on, or we just had people migrate over and it was just leave everything there?
Yeah, we left it on, kept it alive where we could go back, but we didn't continue the conversations there. We didn't have a lot of content that was document binary files. It was more conversations was the focus.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like, and we were, as we were preparing for this, it was, I think you and I were sort of talking about what we're finding is there's different social platforms that are out there, and that's where you have sort of like the collaboration, the ad hoc collaboration that goes on within organizations, and then you have more of like the long-term document storage and CMS, more of the that long-term storage of information and content. And I guess the looking at Slack, they have integration with different sort of CMS products, but there is some storage of documents, but it's not trying to be sort of like Jive's approach, where it's not trying to be a CMS at all. Right?
Yeah, it doesn't have a lot of the traditional CMS features that you would see with fine-grained versioning and retention policies and things like that you see in CMS systems. I see it more for sharing a document that's not going to be the source of the truth or the master copy, let's say,
Hmm.
but it's something that you're sharing that adds to the conversation. And if you really need to have documents managed, you're going to connect it. You use a connector like for Google Drive or Teams or SharePoint, where you have the ability to keep that content somewhere else that's going to be well controlled. But
Hmm.
it's all about the conversation and allowing people to quickly chat back and forth virtually
Hmm.
and organize it in a very basic way, a very simple way.
Hmm.
So I think Slack really leans on the side of simplicity and trying to keep it as simple and clean from a design standpoint that I think attracts the development groups that have an appreciation for clean design.
Yep. Yeah. Part of our conversation too was around, Slack's IPOing sometime soon, maybe this year, and just in talking about, looking at the history of interacting with Jive and with, sort of companies that sort of have their lifetime,
Hmm.
and wondering if we're going to run into people with the same types of issues that came up when we were talking to customers, even right now about Jive, where some of the problems that come up, where you have a component, your social component is from one company, and your CMS or document storage is from another. And I think some of the things that we keep on running into, I mean, we were mentioning these earlier, were issues with search, issues with security, problems with the age-old problem of where do I store things, and just running into some of the, there's also the problem of, I think companies recognize, if I have two of the same types of products within the company, that just creates some confusion about what are we using, and
Right.
what's the right one to use. You see that playing out here, or is you see some of those things coming into play with this at all?
Yeah, what I find interesting is, as I look around in that space with Slack and the overlap with like Teams or Yammer, um, we're in the age of shadow IT,
Yeah.
where cloud-based services without any level of administration that typically is required by enterprise on-prem kind of tools. So
Yeah.
the beauty of the cloud is it's quick and easy, but that's a
Yeah.
double-edged sword. It can easily fractionate your IT infrastructure and and the way that you can control and maintain the right balance of ease of use and engagement of the the individual in the company versus securing the intellectual property of your company and
Hmm.
doing what is kind of expected in the enterprise. Um, you do have integrations that allow you to stay in both,
Hmm.
um, but that is where if you have Slack and Teams and now you put something in between to synchronize that, now you're
Yeah.
worrying about what's the security of this, what's the implication of managing this, does this have really what I need, or is it going to fall short and make it a worse experience that now it's kind of clunky and kludgy to kind of get around. And I think anytime you enter a tool that has an overlapping capability, is you create confusion to where things go. And that can lead to, well, where do I get it? Where do I find it? Where can I discover it? And then how do I control it? How do I put the governance around it? I
Hmm.
have to work within the limitations of, well, this side of the equation over here in Slack, I can do this, but I can't do this over in Teams or vice versa, and that
Hmm.
just complicates your IT strategy. But I think a lot of it comes with trying to make it easy for the end user.
Yeah.
So so there's going to be organizations that are going to want to have, say, Slack for their dev groups because it does the trick for them, and they gotta work with that risk, or they say that's good enough for us.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you see a lot of people that are on Slack. It's kind of good enough for us, and then Slack, seems to be trying to say, well, how do we get into the enterprise? We see and you know Slack for the enterprise grid. You're trying to create a bunch of Slack communities in the umbrella of the enterprise, and that's where I think you see immediately it falls short from an enterprise standpoint. Is you can't just stand up Slack. You have to go to the enterprise level, so you have the right levels of control from a security and kind of information sharing of where are my communities within the organization.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I think when you and I were looking at it, it seems like it was definitely when we're just looking at Slack for Teams, it was something for smaller organizations could really see a lot of benefit, working with it. And I think we enjoyed the user experience, and pretty easy for us to get up and running on it, which was really nice. Some of the other things I think we were looking at from our experiences, often with these things, like sort of like thinking about how we as a service organization can help people if they want to make the move, from a different platform over to Office 365. It's like where can we help them, or where would they need the help? This seems to be one of those where it could be more around like the change management and training, like just preparing people to make the move and what needs to be communicated for those things. But opportunity wise, it looks like there could be some very viable, just give people enough time to get the content that they need to out of it and into the right place, and then just really set some expectations on with people about, okay, this is how you did it in Slack, and this is how you do it in Teams, and communicate and do some, I would classify as like user training around that. But beyond that, I don't, I'm not sure what other additional things. And if you're watching this, please leave a comment to this if there are other things where you would see that you would need an organization your help with. But I just didn't see anything more than that. You see anything, what other things do you think people would need to go and do this?
Well, if there's one thing that we've learned in our Jive migrations, is that every organization has different needs as it relates to how they treat the content they have in their current platform, and translate to where does it go in Office 365. Does it have a purpose over in Office 365? So, as it relates to how we could help organizations going from Slack to Office 365, I think some of those opportunities are really more from a consultative standpoint, where we're helping organizations understand what is the communication that's required, the training, kind of the change management of you're moving people's cheese from one platform. And, some of that might not come down to moving content as much as we used to collaborate this way. How does that translate to the new world? And if we do have information that comes along with that, what's the most methodical way to approach that and assess what comes over? Migration opportunities, it's about how do you use that as an opportunity to do spring cleaning. If you look at moving to a new house, it's a big event, it's a costly event. You can benefit from it if there's some planning, and I don't need to move this table or this piece of furniture from one house to the other because it's not going to be in this new house. If you don't think about it, you move it over, and then you're worried about, how do I sell this? How do I get it out of the house versus getting rid of it in the first place? So I think that's, a discipline that we've got, well honed as an organization to help people go through that process. And then whatever comes over, we've got the technical skills. There might be some lacking in some tooling, but a lot of it's going to be more document centric. And because there's not a lot of heavy features that are going to be relative to what you would want to move over in Office 365. Really, it's going to be the document content, and how do you get that translated and put in the right place. And as we're doing that, the key thing is understand what is that structure in your future state. What does your digital workplace look like? And where do you collaborate around what types of information? So we're not moving it just to, the same structure that you had over in Slack. We're actually moving it to the structure that is the right structure for you long term.
Gotcha.
I think that's a key element of having organization that is through the process of into the Office 365 platform. It's moving it to the right place and putting the right design to make sure you're going to get the most value out of that content after it's moved.
Cool. Excellent. I think that's a great point. I think the big thing for us is going to be designing that digital workplace in Office 365. And I have a feeling some of these efforts might take multiple. Slack might be just one of the different products that folks are using, this combined with other products. And then designing, what does this look like? Where's this going to, and how do we make sure that we're designing Office 365 and have everything set up there properly for the organization? I think that's really important. So, well, thanks, Tom. I appreciate your time doing this, and it was a good conversation today. And folks, everybody, for listening, definitely leave a comment if you're looking into doing this, or if you want to talk about doing this. Please go to ThreeWill.com and you can go through the Contact Us page, and we'll follow up with you there. And thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening to the Work Together Better podcast. We're available on SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you're looking for a partner to help you craft a modern digital workplace on the Microsoft Cloud, please come by and see us at ThreeWill.com. That's the number 3 spelled out, WILL.com. Thank you, and have a great day.